Welcome to Dr. Jeffrey Roth's Looking Good and Feeling Great podcast, live from Las Vegas, with his co-host, Darrell Craig Harris.
Hi folks, this is Dr. Jeffrey Roth, your board-certified plastic surgeon here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we are back at it for another episode. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, it's a beautiful day. It's getting a little cooler in Las Vegas, just a touch.
Yes.
So I guess fall is kind of going to make its way here in a few weeks.
Yeah, we get it. We get about 2 weeks of really nice weather.
Exactly.
And it gets kind of windy and all that kind of stuff. And by cooling off, we're no longer in the triple digits.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean we're in the 90s, so that's.
So which is funny because like it'll dip into the 70s and people are like looking for sweaters at this point. It's preposterous.
Yeah, I know.
And then in the wintertime, of course, it'll pop back up again.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It's a fun town. It's a crazy town, as we know, and we have an interesting population here because, of course, now I think we're almost at 3 million people.
It's crazy. So 3 million statewide, about 3.5 million people.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it's grown so fast. And of course, we have the typical, we have the normal population, and we also have the cocktail waitresses, the dancers, all the singers, all the performers that we know. What are some of the questions that you normally get from, not only from those people, but just in general? What are some of the questions about plastic surgery that are the most common?
Sure. So a lot of them, we get questions all the time. We love questions, as a matter of fact. And you can get to us via our web presence, via our social media presence, via our phone. You can go ahead and pick up the phone and actually get a human being, and we will answer questions, which is like kind of amazing.
Right.
And then sometimes like, you know what, you really need to come in because that's really a question that, I got to take a look and see.
Right.
So the answer is common questions are basically a downtime. And what does this really kind of entail? Depending on whatever it may be, is like, okay, how long am I going to be out of work? When can I go back to lifting weights? When can I go ahead and jog again? Mm-hmm. When can I pick up my 2-year-old, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of that is kind of the time management issues of, okay, I want this, I want to do surgery. Oh, how much work can I really take off?
Right.
Which is, and then so people have to set up their lives. Okay, I have X amount of PTO and I can string that together and then et cetera, et cetera. Some folks will say, well, geez, now I have to get mother or mother-in-law to come in and
help out with the
kids and do the dinners and all that kind of good stuff. Those issues are real issues. And so, I love when people actually think ahead as to, hey, how do I put my ducks in a row so that I can actually get the best result? As opposed to some folks like, oh, this is kind of drive-through surgery, right? I'll, do surgery on Friday and then I'll be good to go on Monday. And the answer was, no.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, some stuff, yes. I mean, basically, if you're fixing an ear or something along those lines from earlobes, that's fine. Otoplasty ear pinning is a real surgery, and you got to go ahead and take care of that as well. So again, it kind of depends on the extent of the operation, conduct of the operation. Most of the time, it's wrapped around, okay, so what does this mean to me when I actually get home? Am I going to be in pain? We talk about pain management. We talk about, do I need somebody to help me? Well, yeah. Do I need anything special as far as a special bed or this or that? Typically not, but sometimes. Again, it just really sort of depends upon the patient and what's going on with their life, right? Some folks are like, oh, geez, my dad, who I live with, he's 90 years old. Can he help me? Do I need somebody to help him while
Sure.
So there's all of that thing. So that's a very, thankfully, a good common question that we get. And there's other ones that are specific to those things. And we take care of a lot. It's Las Vegas, as you mentioned, and you're familiar with the Cirque organization.
Right.
And so we've, during the pandemic, we took care of a lot of those folks, the acrobats, who are some of the most amazing athletes I've ever seen in my life.
Absolutely.
They're doing 6 shows a week. So I don't know.
Well, actually, in Las Vegas, they do 10.
Preposterous.
It's a grueling schedule.
And they're ripped and they're in great shape. But yeah, what's their recovery time? When can they recover? So oftentimes, a bunch of them, because this is the only time that they're ever going to have to actually take 2 weeks off.
Exactly.
And actually recover from something.
Right.
And then we say, okay, well, when can I start doing literally, hey, doc, when can I start doing back handsprings? Okay, not next week. Okay, when now I can do some push-ups and now, what? So yeah, so you got to, athletes are kind of a sort of a special breed anyways. Mm-hmm. And of course, as you know, we take care of a lot of athletes in the office, a lot of boxers, et cetera, and Manny Pacquiao's plastic surgeon, and then a lot of other champions or folks you've heard of.
Right.
And we've had 3 of our patients be on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Oh, wow.
So
Awesome.
the athletes, they always want to go back early, right? Because that's their life. That's where their headspace is. But you have to really sit on them for a good 6 weeks. Otherwise, they always re-injure themselves. And we watch ESPN all the time, and it's always the same sort of thing with athletes. Oh, he got a little sprain and he went back early, and now he's out for the season, right? So with surgery, we really have to say, look, really, you have to have a good solid construct first before you can go back and start doing literally back handsprings or getting shot out of a cannon or whatever.
Yeah, so you mentioned athletes, especially boxers, because you have a connection with Top Rank boxing. How is that with boxers? Because obviously they get hit in the face. Yeah. Is it a situation where they tend to they're going to get face stuff done after they stop boxing, or is it something they do? Is it worth doing?
Fighters want to fight. As you're coming up the ranks, and if you're 10-2, I wouldn't get my rhinoplasty done quite yet.
You might want to wait.
Yeah, you might want to wait on that. Having said that, a couple things with the fighters. Fighters want to fight. They want to go ahead, get repaired, get back in training, get sparring, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Okay. So, and typically most of the injuries I see are around the orbital rim, which is basically around your eye. It's the bony part around your eye because you get hit with a glove. There's bone underneath. There's soft parts that get squished, and that's the stuff that gets cut. Right. And so that's the stuff that gets sewn up. So, and you sew it up in layers, and you do the best you can so that if it gets hit again, and it'll get hit again, that it's less likely to go ahead and open up, et cetera. Now, at the end of the careers, yes, some guys will come back and go, okay, I'm done fighting. Let's go ahead and kind of clean up some of the scar tissue, et cetera, et cetera. That's fine. That's completely legit as far as that goes. They're more utilitarian, I guess, during their run, their ascendancy to championships and then defending championships, et cetera, because they want a solid construct, but less inclined to necessarily be pretty.
Yeah, worried about the aesthetic.
The aesthetic yet.
And they have issues probably with, I would guess, with breathing too, right? Because of the nose is tough.
Well, it depends. If you really squash a nose and it's really fractured, then you got to go ahead and kind of bring that out. You got to deal with hand fractures. You got to deal with, shoulders, knees. So all the orthopedic stuff as well. But from a facial standpoint or aesthetic standpoint, one is to have a good solid construct because right now their face is utilitarian, able to take punishment and keep going, as opposed
and I've seen some pretty rough ones.
Right, as opposed to, because again, if you have a cut above your eye and you're bleeding into the eye, you can't see, you're defenseless, they have to stop the fight because you can't see. If it's typically underneath the eye, it may look terrible and it's bleeding all over the place. But if the fighter can see, then they'll typically will let it go. So the Athletic Commission and the ringside doctors really have done a pretty good job of protecting the fighter and protecting the fighter from themselves. Because these guys,
they want to keep going.
They're warriors, man. Yeah. These guys you got to drag some of these guys out of the ring. Right. And some of the guys, especially the Mexican fighters, they don't care if they die in the ring.
We talked about that before too, but South American, Russian, because a lot of times they're not just from a financial aspect in fighting; they're supporting their whole families,
have their whole country on their back, especially if they're at that level. Yeah, you got dozens or hundreds of guys waving your country's flag in
you don't want to disappoint them.
No chance, right? And you're going to go back to the country. And so that's their time to really, really make their name for themselves and give their best effort. And so these guys are literally warriors. They're out there half naked, swinging at another guy. Yeah. It's amazing what those guys put themselves through.
Yeah, well, I'm a photographer too, so recently shot some of the Top Rank fights. And it's interesting because I grew up watching Ali and all those guys, all the George Foremans and all that. It's a brutal sport, but it's also a fascinating sport. Yeah. At the same time, right?
It's
and I know you actually attend a lot of the boxing.
I do.
Matches.
I go to a lot of fights here in Las Vegas. I'm privileged to do that. And at the end, again, the Athletic Commission doctor goes first. He is the boss, and if they're going to the CT scan or going to the hospital, then you're out. But if they're not and they have a cut, then yes, sometimes I can step in and kind of sew that up. The last Fury Wilder fight, Wilder had a cut in his ear, the concha of his ear. Now he's going to Google concha, which is in your ear. It was bleeding. And so we threw stitches in there. We got it to stop, et cetera, et cetera. That was kind of an odd laceration. But like it says, is I'm happy to be able to help. It's a fascinating sport. It's a spectacle. It's the best people watching ever.
People watching is almost as good as
it's the best. Yeah, I mean, gals come in white fur and sit ringside, and you're like, oh, no. That's not going to work. So, that's no bueno.
Yeah, now you've been having like Gene Simmons, all these different celebrities.
And And the other athletes love it. And so if you have a big fight in Vegas and you watch ESPN afterwards, Twitter, who's watching the fight? LeBron, oh, he got robbed, or other fighters, stuff like that. So everybody, it's very much, especially among athletes, a thing to watch. And there's some exciting boxing going on now. You have, Tyson Fury, you have Deontay Wilder, you have Joshua, you have Shakur Stevenson, you have Bud Crawford. You have a lot of Lomachenko. You have lots of guys that Michaela, female boxer. She's very exciting. She's
tough.
Yeah. And so you have a lot of energy, a lot of good stuff going on. And so for me, growing up here, of course, the fights were at Caesar's Palace. They were outside. Right. I would never in a million years be able to afford a ticket. Okay.
Right, sure.
And I tried to sneak in multiple times, and the Caesar's security thwarted my efforts.
Doctor. Well, you probably weren't a doctor.
No, it was far from that. So kudos to those guys. But that was also the time that they had Formula One racing in the parking lot, which is now where the big shopping mall is.
Yeah.
The Formula
and you had evil jumping the fountain.
Evil jumping the fountain. Crazy. It's just crazy. Well, that's the one thing about Vegas. If you can dream it, you can do it. And people mouth those words. But here, honestly, we're like, oh yeah, okay, we want to have a skating rink in the middle of the desert. It's 120 degrees. Yeah, we'll do it at night. Yeah, we'll put a tent over it. Oh, okay, you know what I mean? We want Formula One racing. Oh, okay. Hey, close the strip, main road in town, because we're going to have the NASCAR guys come every year and do burnouts in the middle of the intersection. Okay, sure, pull a permit. Let's do it. And like nowhere else can you really go ahead and pull that stuff off.
So when you're watching a fight or kind of an athletic event in general, are you looking at it as a doctor, as a surgeon, or do you know what I mean?
It depends. Yeah, you can kind of
like, oh my God, like you see the guy get hit in the nose, you go, oh my God.
You can you can separate yourself. You always want to have a good fight, a good contest. You don't want really anybody to get hurt.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Right. So that's as the medical thing. How can you do? You're a medical guy, so you don't really want anybody to hurt. And if you talk to the neurologist, they won't even talk to you about fights. Okay?
I know.
So so that's a whole other thing. Yeah. But having said that, you want to have a good contest, a good fight, and if you stick around boxing or contact sports long enough, MMA of course too, is you pick out, oh, that's the defense that he's working on. Oh, that's why he's moving his head that way. Yeah. So you see some
There's a lot of strategy.
Artistry. Right. Strategy, artistry of that. It's like, Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson with the basketball. Just the creativity of, oh my God, I can't believe he threw that ball through that hole. What if that? I would never think of a bounce pass, and Magic Johnson would do it like eyes behind his head. So it's that kind of creativity, but you actually can see that in boxing. It's not just two guys who are just like doing windmills,
just beating each other. Right.
No. Now sometimes you get those fights. Ward Gotti 2 or
the Tyson.
Some of the other. Tyson was just it was something else. Go in and kill you within like a minute. There was a couple. There was one in Carson, California, and it was Rios Alvarez. That these two guys didn't block a punch. They
just stood there and beat.
They stood there, and one guy hit one guy for 90 seconds, and the other guy hit the other guy for 90 seconds, and whoever was standing was it was they could have had it in a phone booth. That's one type of fight, and then there's the other fights which technically are spectacular, but seem to be kind of less action in them, right?
Yeah.
So like a Floyd Mayweather fight, he is the master of defense and the master of not getting hit and the master of counterpunching. But if you're there looking for Ward Gotti 2, you're not going to get that.
Right,
so it depends on
very different styles.
And styles make fights, and et cetera. They say that in the boxing world all the time. And so it's up to the promoters to go ahead and try to get the two fighters that will complement each other for the show. To your point is, again, you never want to see anybody injured, right? So whether it's any sport, you hate to see a guy getting carried off a field or anything else like that.
Absolutely.
But in boxing, yes, they know they're going to get hit. They know they're probably going to be cut at some point in the ball game. And so many of them look towards us to go ahead and put it together as best we can,
kind of repair the damage.
And so that going forward, when they're done, and they all, unless you're Bernard Hopkins, fighting until he's 50, when they're done, that yes, it's a good solid construct, and you can kind of have something to work with.
Going back to plastic surgery, what are some of the, I guess, most outlandish or more outlandish requests that you've gotten over the years?
Oh, good
I'm
Lord.
Sure. Not only living in Vegas, but just being a plastic surgeon in general probably lends itself to some crazy requests.
Some crazy requests. Because people have time to think about what they want, or you're just like, good Lord.
Yeah. I just got that settlement money, so now I can go get what
Here we go. Yeah, there's that. The rather pedestrian revenge boobs, after a divorce, that kind of thing.
Revenge boobs.
So, right, well, that's what they call them. But beyond that, I mean, and it's easy to go ahead and pigeonhole that. But by the same token, is I go in and I talk to them. Well, why are you getting these? Like, it's time for a new chapter in my life, and I want to go ahead and look confident. If you really start taking away some of the veneers, you can get to, hey, what's the real reason, what the motivation?
Right.
And then I think you can actually really kind of apply your craft, if you want to call it, to go ahead and do that. Oh, we've had, besides the, hey, can you go any bigger with the AUG, thing? And we have a conversation with that, especially some of the strippers and porn stars. And thankfully, I don't have a lot of those. I mean, I love those folks. They're great. Mm-hmm. They're very interesting to talk to. I don't have a lot of those in my practice, and then I do a lot of revisional surgery. So sometimes they'll come in after the career's done, et cetera, et cetera. So, but is you have that conversation of hey, if we go really big, at some point you're going to pay the piper, and we're going to have to do some sort of lift, right?
Yep.
And
they're going to have back issues, or
right. So all of that. So we talk about all that, and so oftentimes that demographic is like, no, I plan to do it from this year to this year, and I'm going to be done here, and and it's very
planned out.
Very planned out. I'm like, well, okay, well, then I get it. Okay, and let's go ahead and do that. Some of the stuff, I thankfully gets kind of screened at the front. Folks, some of the body modification stuff, people that want forked tongues or people
like chronic guys, crazier stuff.
Well,
some would say. Yeah.
Well, guys that want to look like a Ken or something like that really you have to kind of say, okay, well, really, what are we going for here? And the kind of the whys behind it, et cetera, et cetera. So I thankfully I don't get a lot of banana stuff. Some other guys do, and a lot of it thankfully kind of gets screened at the front. But if through and you get, or you have a gal or guy and they look great, but they want to go ahead and change it for their particular aesthetic, and so again they may have full C, small d, breast, and they went, oh hey doc, I want to be as big as I possibly can. And so that's an aesthetic choice. And we talk about that. It's like, look, you're normal. Yeah. Okay, actually, you're in great shape.
I mean, there is a place for that, but it depends on the doctor's probably comfort zone, too.
Well, there's that, one. And then there's what you can do physically, right? So some folks will say, hey, doc, I want to be XCCs. But they may be a tiny little gal. Like, okay, I can't get you from X to Z because your body habitus isn't going to allow me to do that. And that's judgment. And then that's that part I think is the important part.
Yeah, and we talked about too, along the same lines about the butt implants, which has been a subject that comes up a lot.
Sure.
And that's something that I know you don't really feel comfortable doing.
Yeah. So the whole thing, and it's interesting, is what is beauty, right? And so we mankind, wax poetically, have been talking about this for eons, right? And so there's a few guys that have tried to measure it out and run it through computers and blah, blah, blah. And
I guess there's a mathematical formula of what's considered.
Right. So what is beauty, right? Mm-hmm. And it changes. There's some stuff that is clearly beautiful from the ancient Greeks and Romans, and we know this from sculpture and all that kind of stuff. There's certain ratios. Okay, fine. And all my artists out there will go ahead and say, oh no, the ratio is X, Y, and Z, right? So which is all true. But there's also variations, especially race, ethnicity, tall girls, short girl, et cetera, shape of face. And then there are trends, meaning that, for example, in Brazil, classic example is Brazilians, again, back in the 80s, they liked gals with a little bit more behind, but thin, and then not a lot of breast. Okay, fine. Until a Playboy showed up down there, and Baywatch showed up, and then all of a sudden,
Pamela Anderson changed a lot of lives.
100%. Because then, and we know this because all of a sudden the sales of implants went bananas. In Brazil, and so they're doing all of these extra. So you know that by statistics. And again, when I started practice 20 years ago, everybody wanted to be a size 0. I had girls coming in there with size 2s and 3s. They wanted liposuction. To look like Nicole Richie, right? Or like Paris Hilton, who are beautiful girls, but that's their body habitus, right?
I wouldn't say aberrations, but it's just not really the typical.
Not for everybody.
It's not the average American.
Right. Oh yeah, 100%.
I should say,
right, 100%. And then came the Kardashians, right? And that flipped everything on its head because these girls are curvy, which is great. Okay, so guess what? Skinny girls are great. Thick girls are great. Curvy girls are great.
Yeah, right? That's whatever really makes you happy.
Exactly. Well, it's what, you can't beat genetics. Okay. And yes, we can modify it a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. And after childbirth or menopause or whatever, we can do some stuff. Okay.
Sure.
So, but yeah, to get Kim Kardashian to go ahead and look like, Paris Hilton, not going to work. So having said that, so all of a sudden everybody kind of wanted butts, right? So, and how do you get that is either through big squats or is butt implants. And again, the implants in Brazil, different than the implants here in the United States. There's also fat transfer from one to another. There's also Sculptra, which you can inject. So there's a few methodologies to do that. What happened is the trend got ahead of science in as much as these folks were, and every major city has had a death secondary to butt injections, would go to some no-tell motel and get injected
some
with
back alley.
Who knows what.
Right.
From Fix-A-Flats to who knows what in the butt to have a shapelier bottom. And that's an issue. Also, anatomically, you have to be careful because there's a plexus of arteries and veins and stuff.
Yeah, blood supply issues, right?
Blood supply issues, and where you're putting the fat through that little quadrangle that can go ahead and then send fat where you don't want it. Infection's a problem. Sitting on is a problem. So that's a bit problematic. Of all the things that we do in aesthetic surgery, that's the one that seems to have the most morbidity, most problems with it. So we kind of address that. And then oftentimes in my practice is we'll go ahead and aggressively liposuction out the flanks. And folks have come in and their husbands say, he put something in the butt, didn't he? And they're like, no, and I'm like, no, I swear to God.
Yeah.
But again, it's contrast.
It's a bit of a visual.
100%.
Right.
So if you go ahead and you shape that down, the butt looks a little bit, more protuberant. And so you can go ahead and do that without necessarily putting that in. Now, some guys do it. They do it all the time. They get good results. They're safe. It just depends on kind of how aggressive you want to get and how your office and world is really kind of set up for all of that.
What do you think about, because it's become more and more popular, the whole TV show doctor thing, especially with plastic surgeon recently. There's Botched and some of the 90210, the new version of that, which some of those folks.
Sure.
What's your feeling on that? Like how they disseminate information, how
that's a
general.
That's a great question. And I was brought up, and I'm dating myself now. I guess when I'm saying this with your Dr. Kildare's, right?
Marcus Welby,
and MASH, and some of half the people just went, well, who? You go Google it. So Richard Chamberlain, right? So anyway. So, and then it came St. Elsewhere, and then Scrubs, and then so there's always been that fascination with medicine, okay, and that Grey's Anatomy, of course,
General Hospital,
right? So there's So there's always been that fascination because that's where drama happens, right?
Yeah, right.
It's life and death,
Yep.
it's surgery, so it's a place where the drama lives. So having said that, in medicine, there's always been that sort of drama, and people, it's a bit mysterious, right? Because we wear special clothing, and then we go behind a curtain.
Use words that a lot of people don't
we use
understand.
the special incantations, right? From Greek and Latin, and then we use potions, medicines and stuff. So there's and what I try to do is dispel that in as much as possible. I try to take the scary and the mystery out, right?
Sure.
So I think if those folks are providing a educational service and not just being a 60-minute commercial, okay, for themselves, or others, I think that's important. I think to your thing, Botched, I think that they're both good surgeons. I like the fact that they're showing that things don't always go well.
Right.
I like the fact that they say, hey, this is a 9-month follow-up. Okay, ...
Yep.
I like the fact that they turn down people from doing things. So, and that's much more reality.
Yeah, because that's something you do. You don't take all patients. You're particular about who you accept.
And I thankfully am at a point in my life, I guess, that I don't have to do every case.
Right.
So thank God. Right. And so typically, I don't operate on people who aren't nice, which is fabulous for me. So
avoid a lot of headaches
because there's that, and it's those folks that tend to be together and responsible and do the perioperative care and listen, and they tend to get better results,
Sure.
et cetera, et cetera. So I think that all is important. But to answer your question, there's some really, Dr. Pimple Popper of all things went ahead and did this on social media, and then she got her own show, right?
Yeah. And so, she's great. You can tell that she has a passion for what she does.
She does a good job. I think Sheila Nazarian does a good job. I think the all-female cast now on 90210, Susan Court, and those gals do a good job.
Right.
Cash as well.
And the other part of that, from the female perspective, it's great to see really very super competent, smart, intelligent women
100%
in the industry too, right?
100%. I applaud the nurses, of course, the doctors, and especially the surgeons, et cetera, because they had to go through harder stuff than I had to go through. So now things are a little bit better now, ... But having said that, no, they had a harder road. And those folks that you see there, and many of them are my friends, are very competent, very confident.
They're at the top of the profession. Right?
And they get, by the way, they're good surgeons, and they get good results, and they take care of their patients well. Yeah. So I'm glad that at least Hollywood has selected out some good folks to be examples of that so far.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I think it does, the information aspect. It's funny because when you live in Las Vegas, New York, LA, you have access to doctors like that. But if you live in Iowa or you live in Nebraska, maybe it's hard to actually. Maybe
a little harder.
Yeah. So it's nice for them to get, and obviously those are some of the top people as you are. It's nice to hear from those doctors and see how they do things.
Sure.
So then when you go and visit a local doctor, you kind of have a little bit of a benchmark.
Sure.
Right.
And again, I know these folks, and they turn down, patients, or they actually talk to their patients, and perioperative care is important to them as well. So as I watch some of these shows, and there's the educational aspect. Oh, that's good information. And then 2, I look past the veneer. Oh, what a beautiful office. ... But hey, what technique are they actually using?
Yeah.
What are they actually saying to the patient? And for me, that's kind of why I watch the shows. And so I find that fascinating. And then House was always interesting, but I was annoying to watch with that because they would say the thing. I'm like, oh, schistosomiasis. And my wife would be like, really? I'm like, I went to medical school. What?
Yeah.
So
did you find, when you watch medical shows, I mean, obviously not the reality shows, but the other shows like House, do you find that generally they're pretty accurate with the medical terminology? And they obviously have advisors. But.
Yeah, they have advisors. And they do a pretty, I mean, sometimes you shake your head. It's like, you're like, what?
That would never happen.
House could never work, in a million. I mean, you'd be at HR every 3 seconds. And no chance, So now again, back in the day, things were different when I was coming through. Yes, they could hit you in the OR, yell and scream, berate you, and all that stuff.
A lot of characters.
So especially in Philly, there was plenty of guys. And I was very lucky. The guys and gals that trained me actually wanted to be there, and they wanted to teach residents and everything. So I got very lucky.
Yeah. Because not everybody, I mean, even though you might be a professor, not everybody necessarily likes teaching, right?
Right. So no. But thankfully where I was and everything else like that, I was very fortunate, which then leads me to, okay, well, when you're done with all of that, and you're confronted by a patient of, okay, well, what are we going to do? And this is something out of the ordinary, weird or whatever. You go back to your training and you're like, okay, so what would Dr. Mathis do? What would Dr. Hoffman do? What would Dr. Rosenfield do? Okay, I'll do that.
Right.
And so,
because they're some of the top guys in the world.
And
right?
if you have enough time, you get to email them with pictures and go, hey, Lauren, I have this interesting case. This is what I'm thinking of doing. And then he can get back to you like, well, yeah, that's what I used to do, but here's what works better. Yeah. And I found, thankfully, in my world at least, a lot of collegiality. And folks that are brutally honest and will, I mean, it's
but you need that, right?
Al Ambrose will tell you, hey, I screwed this up 10 different ways, but now I think I have this down to get good, consistent results. That's really really priceless. And again, when I go to medical meetings, and hopefully someday soon we'll actually get back to medical meetings,
sure,
where everybody can fly in and see each other. But my favorite part of that was lunch. Because you'd be at a table with 5, 6 other guys and gals, and one guy would be from Brazil, one guy would be from New York, one guy would be somewhere else, and they all had different points of view. And I saw this lecture, it stinks. This is why, and this
is what I'm doing, right?
Right. Yeah. And so all of the puffery or whatever goes away, and you get down to, hey, this is what works for me. You might try this at home to best serve your patient. And so for me, that was always kind of cool.
Yeah. Did you when you did your residency? I know it was in Philly. Was that?
So that was general surgery.
Oh,
so
general.
That was
that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, so 7 years general surgery in Philly, 2 years at UCSF in San Francisco. That was plastics.
Okay.
And then a year of microsurgery, enhanced surgery at USC, LA County in LA. So my dad was like, when are you done? I'm like, we'll get there.
That's funny.
But for me, a residency, it was great because you really had one thing to concentrate on, which was taking care of your patients, being a good team member, getting better. and reading literature and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so
and doing general surgery, and also, I know you did emergency room stuff. That it must give you, it's just a little extra confidence when you're doing plastic surgery because you have the trauma experience, you have that experience if something goes wrong, right?
Sure. And it's some things that are ingrained with you. For example, as you saw the other day, because you came with me to the operating room and we filmed some stuff in the OR. Most often,
an awesome team, by the way. Everybody was very nice.
Yes.
And,
everything went really well that day. But you'll notice that when the patient comes in, I'll talk to the patient and I'll stand next to them because that's the way I was taught in general surgery. If somebody's manipulating the airway, that you should probably be there, just in case. Not that in my entire career anything would ever happen, thank God. But
you never. There's physiology you don't know about,
right? But you never know. And then sometimes things go awry in the operating room, and you get called upon your vascular surgery skills. Like, okay, proximal distance control. How am I going to do this? Okay, fine, and that's why the program's so darn long, so that you see things multiple times, so kind of how to
triage
fix it.
Right. Yeah. The other thing I really liked was awesome. I thought was you have a multiracial. It's very inclusive.
Right.
Those guys probably had quite a road.
Oh, 100%. So yeah, and I again was very fortunate. Training in Philly and San Francisco,
working with everybody.
Las Vegas, you work with everybody, and that's one nice thing about medicine, which I really love. Is nobody cares who your dad is.
Yeah, they don't care what your skin color is. As long as you got to just deliver.
So it work. Show up and work. Don't care where you came from. Don't care what boat you came over. Don't care the color of skin. Okay, so what's the potassium look like? Right. So all the other crap goes out the window.
Yeah.
Which is great. So everybody's focused on the patient, et cetera, et cetera. Now, later, if you want to go down to Cedars of Lebanon for food, and you bring my friend Lila Maribi with her, and she speaks that language, and all the stuff comes out. That's awesome.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So you want to go to Chinatown with my other buddy Harchi Liu,
right.
And he's doing the ordering, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So that part it's the fun part afterwards.
It's neat.
But when it comes to taking care of actual patients, the cutting and sewing, the management, thankfully, race, religion, all that goes out the window because the focus is.
And there's amazing doctors
patient.
Around the world, of course.
Oh, right? Absolutely, yeah. And especially the guys that are doing a lot of something with nothing. The guys that are
South America, they're doing the cleft palates, and they're doing all that.
South America, Africa, doing cleft palate surgery, hand surgery, burn surgery, reconstructive surgery, and there's medical missions and all that kind of stuff that do that, and you go and you try to train these guys and gals to go ahead and to be able to emulate stuff. Those folks especially the folks that are doing a lot of stuff with nothing.
Yeah,
my hat is absolutely off to them, and they have the biggest hearts. Ever, because you go ahead and you listen to the lectures and the photos, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, and you see like the mercy ships and what those. Because the thing we talked about that the other day actually with the patient's breast reduction, because it was a big issue for her, and I said you really changed her life, and you were kind of really modest about it, but it's true, like those things where people have dealt with that for years, whether it's aesthetic or whether they're having back pain or whatever it is. It's life changing for them, right?
Yeah. So you should, and that's the thing is, and as a resident, you're grinding through. You're working 120 hours a week. You're checking all the labs. You're checking all how much is coming out of that drain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sure. But you try not to forget that all these folks are people as well.
Yeah.
And
their emotions are wrapped up in
somebody's mom and everything else, and especially when you're talking about things like like cancer or something like that. That may be one of 70 patients you're seeing that day, but that's going to be the biggest conversation that this family has had ever, and you can't really take that lightly. And that's where the art meets the science of medicine, to see the other person and walk in their shoes.
Being able to connect.
Well, and the empathy. And they actually try best they can to look for that in medical school admissions as well, not just somebody who can juggle test tubes or
I just want to make money.
And
whatever the case is.
Well, if you're trying to make money in medicine, get out. No, seriously,
we had that conversation.
Yeah, seriously, now.
Right.
Okay. So kids at home, if you're thinking of making medicine, get out. it's great. Go make a ton of money, and be an entrepreneur. Go ahead and build rocket ships and so. Yeah, absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
But if you want to, it's a calling. If you want to actually, I believe it's a calling.
Right.
If you want to serve, if you want to make a difference, if you want to do that, then medicine is a really good place for that. If you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to make buku bucks, it ain't there. One, it ain't there anymore, and you can do much better financially with a lot less effort.
Yeah,
a lot
less student loans,
and being exposed to stuff and have vomit in your shoes. Go in that different pathway. So
right.
So yeah. So but
yeah, it's good. It's good because we had that conversation before about people always assume, oh, you're a plastic surgeon in Vegas, oh, you must be rich, and it's like, well, it's not that simple at all, is it? Because it's years and years of school. It's fine.
And there's that, and there's a lot of competition, and I'm thankful. I wake up every morning grateful.
Yeah.
In as much as, oh, look at that one, I get an extra day.
Yeah. And you get to do what you love.
And then I get to do, and I have I have a roof, and I have gas in the car that runs, and I have food in the fridge.
Nice family.
And I'm really blessed. And every day I'm like, oh, and so now I put my hard hat on, my lunchbox, and I go to work, and I love what I do. Right. And so I think like I won the whole.
I'm the same way. I kind of, you mentioned like sort of like being a plumber or being the guy fixing the roof. I was like, I've always viewed that too. Like I'm hired to come in and do a job, if it's a musician or if it's whatever, it's hosting or whatever it is. And you just want to do something that, first of all, that you love and you have a passion for. And you can always tell when people do have that.
Oh, the guys and gals that love it, they're the ones that are always the meetings. And they're the ones that are writing papers and reading papers.
They're the first ones there, last ones to leave.
Right. And so they're like, hey, let's do this. And boy, this is something different. And and let's do X, Y, and Z. And it's that enthusiasm that I think makes the extra effort, and those guys and gals get better. So if you love what you do, right, it's not really work. This is what I do, and hey, there's something new. Hey, tell me about that.
Yeah.
And again, Gil Gradinger was lots of wisdom, and he was a professor of mine. Said, Jeffrey, if you get bored in plastic surgery, you're not reading enough.
Yeah.
Because these folks are always pushing the envelope,
and it's always changing and morphing.
It's always changing, and so even in the relatively small time, 20, 30 years, I've been a doctor, is things have changed a ton, both medicine-wise and as well as kind of the geopolitical, financial, whatever portion of medicine as well.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And nothing is as consistent as change. So that's going to go ahead and change. But you have to go back to your basic principles. And the bottom line, and I was just talking to a medical student about this a couple of days ago, is what's best for the patient.
Yep.
So, you can have all kinds of bells and whistles and everything else like that is okay.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day, is that the best for the patient? Okay, well then that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
So that has to be, in my opinion, the guidepost.
And that's really what builds a successful business or a successful practice, is when people know that you care about what you're doing.
Well, yeah, passion.
And it's not just about the money. It's about
and it's attentiveness, and it's and all of that.
Yeah. How can people find you online and ask? I know we have a lot of people that ask us questions. What's the best way for them to reach you?
Sure. So we're easy to find. We're on the World Wide Web, which I guess is getting really popular nowadays.
That's all the kids are doing.
All the kids, yeah, that's right. So, which is www.jjrothmd.com. And that's kind of our cornerstone. And so we have lots of information on there. And so you can get, if you have further questions, there's a contact thing. You can get a hold of us. Also, our social media. We have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have Facebook. You can get at us through there. And we still answer the phone with like a human being. And so
a lot of very nice human beings.
Yes, I'm blessed with the staff that
you are. That's awesome staff.
And so, we answer the phone. So if you have a question, by all means, give us a call. And we will give you the best answer that we know how.
Yeah, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. So, and definitely, please feel free to ask us questions there. Either one of us are the ones that are reading those, and we definitely address those as we do more episodes.
Absolutely. So if we love questions, and so if you have any questions, and I answer hundreds of questions a day, and for me it's fun. We get to talk about something I love. So by all means, if you have a question, by all means, go ahead and get at us, and should be able to address that for you.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world either, because now we're actually global. I think we're getting downloads in 40 countries.
That's spectacular.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff. So again, if you can hear us, you can probably get back at us through whatever means you have. But by all means, if you have a question, please do ask.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And please check out all of our episodes online. We're on all the major podcast outlets, including iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the usual ones. And we really appreciate your support.
Absolutely fantastic. And thank you to Shure Microphones that are helping me actually sound decent. And that's like a big deal. So
not easy to do, I tell you.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. But and also our nice engineer, Alex. He's sitting here helping us out.
Yay. Yes.
Yay. Go, yeah. Alex.
Absolutely. Live from Mark Chinook's The Space here in Las Vegas.
I was just going to say, we should just get all those out there.
That's it. I got it.
Exactly. Thank you very much, everybody. And please have an awesome day. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us. For further information, please visit the podcast website link for Dr. Jeffrey Roth. See you next time.